War has rules, or at least it should. On the 4th anniversary of Russia's invasion, Kyiv draws its red lines. No strikes on children, no attacks on political centers, no descent into lawlessness. But as drones hit deep inside Russia and Washington issues a warning to Ukraine, are those boundaries already under strain? Even amid the devastation of war, there must be lines that are never crossed. That was the message delivered on February 24th by Kyrylo Budanov, head of Ukraine's Office of the President, as he outlined what he described as fundamental limits in armed conflict. Speaking to RBC Ukraine, Budanov acknowledged the brutal reality of war, describing it as a tragedy that claims thousands of lives, destroys cities, and shatters destinies. Yet, he insisted that even in such circumstances, certain principles must remain inviolable.
This is a terrible event that takes thousands of lives, destroys cities, and breaks destinies. But even here, there must be certain boundaries that cannot be crossed under any circumstances. Despite the cruelty of war, I cannot understand who and under what circumstances can raise a weapon against a child or an elderly person who is physically unable to resist.
He called such actions a loss of human dignity. He also drew attention to what he sees as another red line: attacks on political decision-making centers and the locations of national leaders.
It does not matter whether we are talking about Kyiv or a Valdai situation.
The pointed remark was widely interpreted as a reference to Russian President Vladimir Putin's residence northwest of Moscow. Budanov stressed that respect for these basic rules is especially vital at a time when difficult peace negotiations may be underway. In his view, even the harshest conflicts must remain bound by limits not only for the protection of civilians, but for the preservation of a minimum standard of human conduct in war. Meanwhile, tensions between Washington and Kyiv have surfaced following a Ukrainian strike on Russian territory, with the United States issuing a formal warning after American economic interests were affected. The US State Department told the Ukrainian government to refrain from hitting US interests after a Ukrainian attack on the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. Ukraine's ambassador to Washington, Olha Stefanishina, described the message as a demarche, a formal diplomatic communication, but declined to say whether she had been summoned to the State Department. Stefanishina said the outreach followed the Novorossiysk strike because it impacted American and Kazakh economic interests. Most of Kazakhstan's oil exports pass through the port, which briefly halted November shipments after a Ukrainian drone attack. She stressed that the communication was not aimed at discouraging Ukraine from striking Russian military or energy infrastructure more broadly.
This reach-out was not related to encouraging Ukraine from refraining to attack Russian military and energy infrastructure. It was related to the very fact that American economic interest was affected there.
Her comments come after 2 days of peace talks in Geneva failed to produce a breakthrough. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone strikes have continued inside Russia. Authorities in Smolensk Oblast said 4 people were killed and 10 injured after drones targeted the Dorogobuj chemical plant, triggering a large fire. The attack followed a previous strike on Metafrax chemicals in Perm Krai, a major producer of materials used in explosives and other military-grade products. As diplomacy falters and cross-border strikes persist, the conflict shows little sign of easing, with economic and strategic interests increasingly entangled.